Fallen leaves lay thick upon the ground, like soldiers after some great slaughter. A man in patched faded greens was sitting cross-legged atop a weathered stone sepulchre, fingering the strings of a wood harp. The music was soft and sad. Merritt knew the song. High in the halls of the kings who are gone, Jenny would dance with her ghosts. "Get off there," Merritt said. "You're sitting on a king." Hey everyone, Crowfood's daughter here, and if you click this video, you have reached the Disputed Lands. In today's video, we will be covering a topic I had mentioned in a recent livestream on LML's channel, the legendary Hammer of Justice, Tristifer IV, and the 100th battle that ended his reign. And in doing so, we will be discussing a possible connection to another legend that you may not have previously considered. But before we do that, we need to discuss two locations within our storyline, Oldstones and Highheart. Now let's get started. So, Oldstones. We are taken to Oldstones on two separate occasions within the series. Once, when Rob and Catelyn are traveling through the Riverlands to attend the Red Wedding in A Clash of Kings, and a second time within the epilogue of A Storm of Swords, when the Brotherhood is exacting justice for what had occurred at the Red Wedding. Oldstones happens to be one of the more mysterious places within the storyline, as it is an ancient ruined castle of the First Men whose name is lost to history, and is now only referred to by the remnants of stones littering where it once stood. Interestingly, Oldstones also happens to be the same location where Duncan Targaryen, the Prince of Dragonflies, would meet his future wife, Jenny of Oldstones. Though betrothed to a daughter of House Baratheon of Storm's End, Duncan became enamored of a strange, lovely, and mysterious girl who called herself Jenny of Oldstones in 239 AC, whilst traveling in the Riverlands. Though she dwelt half-wild amidst ruins and claimed descent from the long-vanished kings of the First Men, the small folk of surrounding villages mocked such tales, insisting that she was only some half-mad peasant girl. Although it is understood Jenny of Oldstones most likely perished with her Prince of Dragonflies during the tragedy of Summerhall, we learn there is a character with a connection to Jenny still alive within the present timeline, the ghost of Highheart, whom we meet when Arya is traveling with the Brotherhood in the Riverlands. "I'll have my payment now. I'll have the song you promised me." And so Lem woke Tom Sevenstrings beneath his furs, and brought him yawning to the fireside with his wood harp in hand. "The same song as before?" he asked. "Oh, aye, my Jenny's song. Is there another?" Interestingly, like Oldstones, Highheart happens to be another ancient and storied location within the Riverlands. You see, Highheart was once a sacred place prior to the Andal invasion, and was crowned by a grove of 31 giant weirwoods, said to have been as ancient as any that had been seen in the Seven Kingdoms. However, like Oldstones, Highheart is a shell of its former glory, and only the weirwood stumps remain as a testament to this legend. So, within the series, we are taken to Oldstones not once but twice, and in turn, we are also taken to Highheart on two separate occasions. As a reader, it seemed as though the author was placing an intertwining connection to these two ancient and mysterious places, a connection I couldn't readily put my finger on. So I read the chapters again. And what you might not have caught is that when we are introduced to each location, we are being given the retelling of a legend in both instances. In the case of Oldstones, we find a worn statue and are introduced to the legend of Tristifer IV, a hero and First Men king of the Riverlands. "Does this castle have a name?" he asked quietly when she came up to him. "Oldstones. All the small folk called it when I was a girl, but no doubt it had some other name when it was still a hall of kings." After some discussion, Rob studies a sepulchre and asks, "Whose grave is this?" Here lies Tristifer, the fourth of his name, king of the rivers and the hills. Her father had told her his story once. He ruled from the trident to the neck, thousands of years before Jenny and her prince, in the days when the kingdoms of the first men were falling one after the other before the onslaught of the Andals. The hammer of justice, they called him. He fought 100 battles and won 99, or so the singers say. And when he raised this castle, it was the strongest in Westeros. She put a hand on her son's shoulder. He died in his 100th battle, when 7 Andal kings joined forces against him. Catelyn then goes on to relate that Tristifer's heir was not capable like his father, and the Riverlands fell to the Andals shortly thereafter. So what we get with the legend of Tristifer is a man celebrated for his victories against the Andals, in addition to a cautionary tale of how a single defeat can determine the fate of an entire kingdom. Now, we are not given much information regarding this 100th battle, only that 7 Andal kings were said to have joined forces. In reality, there being 7 Andal kings in particular is a possible conflation, as the Andals have a thing for making 7 out of everything to further testify to their religion. So, there was probably more than one Andal king present in this fabled 100th battle. We just don't know how many. And the World Book has implied the name of at least one king who could have been present, as House Tully was gifted the lands surrounding River Run by an Andal king of House Vance sometime after Tristifer's defeat. But as to the specifics of this battle, its name, where it took place, or the names of the other Andal kings present, we are really at a loss for information. Now, with that being said, in addition to Oldstones and the tale of Tristifer, when we are introduced to the one sacred hill of Highheart, we are also provided with another legend, the legend of an Andal king named Erik the Kingslayer. Highheart had been sacred to the children of the forest, Tom Seven Strings told her, and some of their magic lingered here still. No harm can ever come to those asleep here, the singer said. Arya thought that must be true. The hill was so high, and the surrounding land so flat that no enemy could approach unseen. The small folk hereabouts shunned the place, Tom told her. It was said to be haunted by the ghosts of the children of the forest who had died here when the Andal king named Erik the Kingslayer had cut down their grove. So, as it turns out, with both Oldstones and Highheart, not only are we being provided with the retelling of a legend when we are introduced to each location, but in both instances, we are being provided with legends said to have occurred during the time of the Andal conquest of the Riverlands. In the case of Oldstones, we hear of a battle where the first men are defeated by the Andals. In the case of Highheart, we hear of a battle where the Andals defeat the children and cut down their sacred grove. And now, this is where it gets interesting. You see, the World Book also discusses the battle for Highheart, and in this retelling, the Maester provides us with a little more backstory and goes further to explain the children were not alone in defending Highheart. Interestingly, we learned the first men were also involved in this great battle, as Highheart was considered sacred by both groups who worshipped the old gods. There, while under the protection of the kings of the first men, the children of the forest had tended to the mighty carved weirwoods that crowned it. 31, according to Archmaester Laurent, in his manuscript, Old Places of the Trident. When Erreg's warriors sought to cut down the trees, the first men are said to have fought beside the children, but the might of the Andals was too great. Though the children and the first men made a valiant effort to defend their holy grove, all were slain. So, in reality, when we learn of Highheart in this series, we are being privy to an account of a battle where the Andals defeat not only the children, but also the first men. Now, what you might not have caught is that the Riverlands chapter of the World Book also discusses Tristifer IV and his 100th battle, and the air that failed him, directly before retelling the battle for High Heart and the infamous Erik the Kingslayer. And what do you know? Look what was used as the transition between the two legends. In this same era, one Andal, remembered in legend as Erik the Kingslayer, came across the great hill of High Heart. In that same era. You see, what we are being provided with here is the possibility these two historic figures were contemporaries. We have Tristifer, a first men king, who was said to have ruled a huge swath of the Riverlands from the Trident to the Neck, who was defeated by the Andals in his 100th battle. And in that same era, an Andal king named Erik the Kingslayer is said to have won a battle and destroyed a sacred place of the Riverlands that was said to have been under the protection of the kings of the first men. And so, if the great hill of High Heart was under the protection of the kings of the first men, it is probably a good assumption that one of those kings might have been the king of the rivers and the hills. So what we see here is there is a possibility the storied 100th battle Tristifer IV is said to have lost was none other than the enigmatic Battle for High Heart.
If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching.